Hey everybody, and welcome to another Interstellar Modeler. This is now part 2 of creating our diorama with a water feature utilizing this mini flying sub kit. Alright, so as you know, last we left off we were creating our base, which actually turned out looking like this. We're going to be resting our flying sub on top of that, and we'll get to that later. Let me just show you what I've done with the model kit so far. So I've primed it with a white primer. And on the interior, you'll see I've applied some chrome here, and that will help with the lighting. Now for our lights, we're going to be using these chip lights that I bought from modeltrainsoftware.com, and I highly recommend that website. They've got a lot of options for lighting your model kits. And this is something that's fairly new that they offer. These are small little lights. You can see they're very tiny, and they come in 3 sizes. They have chip, nano, and pico. These are the chip size here. I also ordered some pico lights to experiment with those as well. I may use those for the interior, or I may use some chip lights for the interior. The one thing about the chip lights, when you do hook them up, they're pretty bright, as I said, so they're definitely going to be used for the spotlights, but we don't need the interior to be that bright, so I may use chip lights but hook to a coin-size battery instead, so they're not quite as bright, or I may resort to using the pico lights instead. The engines are going to be lit with some chip lights as well. I have some orange colored lights for those. Now when you do order these, and as I said they come in different sizes, you do need to specify what battery source you'll be using. These have been configured now to work with a 6 to 12 volt battery, so we'll be able to have our choice of either using a coin size or going to a 9 volt if we want to. For the interior detailing, we're going to be using this cardboard cutout that comes with the kit. I didn't realize it came with it until I opened up the kit. I was thinking about using the photo etch kit that you can get from Photographics, but I think this will be sufficient for what we need. Basically what I need is just to be able to look through that window and see that there is some interior detailing there. The model is fairly small, so I don't think it needs to be too elaborate there. So hopefully this will work out for what we need here. So I'm ready to move on here. The first step is to go ahead and start detailing the front window. It is a clear piece, and we do have to do some light blocking from the other side, and then we have to paint some blue trim around the windows. So, and also we have to apply some silver paint here on the sides. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to begin with that, and I'll show you my progress here in just a second. So what I've done here before we start painting is to add masking fluid along the main windows and the back of the headlights. And this is how it turned out. So the masking fluid helped out a lot. However, I still had to hand paint some of the blue framing around the windows, so I did the best I could there. As for the back side, I applied some tulip paint. If you're not familiar with it, it's this stuff here. It goes on rather thick, so if you light block, it works pretty well for that. But if you recall, I left some masking fluid on the back side of the searchlights. After applying the tulip paint, I just peeled that away and it left those areas clear, and that's where we're going to be mounting our lights. Okay, so what I've decided to do is to cut out these hexagonal patterns here in this cardboard cutout and replace them with a clear piece of styrene plastic that's been frosted and sanded. And then we're going to go ahead and place some lights right underneath them. So I'm going to go ahead and put this into the flying sub here and just kind of see what kind of effect we're getting here. And I may decide to tint these yellow, just not decided yet on that. So let's just go ahead and see what kind of effect we get. So this is the effect now with a 9 volt battery, and you can see how bright it is. This is just one chip light now being lit. So you can see it's too bright for us, so we're going to have to step down to a coin-size battery. So let's see how that looks. Okay, so this is now the effect with just one chip light hooked up to a coin-size battery, and you can see it's not bad. It's doing a pretty decent job with illuminating the interior. So what I think I'll do then is go with 2 chip lights hooked up to this coin-size battery while hooking up the headlights and the engines to a 9 volt, because we really have to make those shine. What I'm also encouraged by is just the detailing that's being provided here for this simple cardboard cutout that came with the kit here. Remember, our goal here is just to be able to see through those windows and see that there is some detailing in the back, and I think this is going to really do a nice job with that. Alright, so let's go ahead and move forward. Okay guys, moving on to the engines. If you recall, the little holes here had some detailing, and I tried to preserve that by drilling in between with a pin vise, seeing how that looked, but it just really didn't look right to me, so I just eliminated that and drilled them out completely. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to apply some tulip paint here because the lights are bright enough to shine through the plastic, so we have to light block it. and then we'll use some clear styrene plastic to mount just right behind the holes, and then the lights will go behind that. Now ideally it would have been great to have some chip lights that would flicker, and these are the chip lights I ordered for this here. They're going to be an orange color, but unfortunately there aren't any available that do that. You can find 1.8 millimeter LEDs that can flicker as well, but there's just not a lot of room to accommodate them in this model, so we'll just have to go with steady lights instead. Okay, and this is what it looks like now after the tulip paint and plastic has been installed. I applied the plastic first because I figured I couldn't really glue on top of tulip paint. So the styrene went on first, and I applied the tulip paint around. I got as close to the portholes as I could there, and I tested it with a light shining behind it, and it looks like it's going to do a good job blocking the light. Okay, so what I'm doing now is just wiring the lights in place and just feeding them through the back end here. And I've made some markings where I want the lights to be attached, and I'm just using super glue now to hold them in place. And if you'll notice, I also cut some grooves here just to allow the wires to feed through. That way they're not, floating around all over the place. And that way when the interior sets down, it'll be able to do so flush. Also, I did paint this section silver. I had anticipated possibly putting some blinking lights in here, but I decided to forego that. Just don't think it'll look right with the cardboard cutout that I have there. That's where the photo etch no doubt would work out real well. Okay, to install the engine lights, I just use this as a guide. Obviously we want the LEDs to be right behind these two openings. So I just put a little bend in the wire here and then applied super glue, and that held them into place. So what's really nice about these chip wires, they are designed for really small spaces like this. You can see the wires are very thin and they don't take up much space at all. And the headlights were glued right into place here and here. So this most challenging part of this kit is painting these blue stripes. The hard part is just getting this angle from the tail on forward. But we got everything taped up now, so I'm going to go ahead and airbrush the Blue Angels blue that we're going to use for this trim. Okay, and this is how it turned out. You can see it looks pretty good here. The trick to getting these lines like this is just really light coats, one after the other until you get the darkness that you're looking for. You just have to be patient. When you apply with an airbrush, the paint can go on fairly light, so you just have to keep at it until you get to the right darkness. So, we're getting close to completion. Okay guys, you can see I have everything in place. The interior now is held in place with hot glue, and I've got the pilot as well as the additional seat in place there as well. Now, I actually glued the two halves together. I was ready to go, everything was all set. Tested the lights only to find the whole tail section glowed red, so I had to pull it apart, and now we have the light block. So again, using tulip paint, again, very critical to have when you are lighting models, because when you have lights sitting next to the walls of these models there, you'd think the plastic was thick enough, only to find when you have everything put together, you see this glow right through the plastic. So it's always good to test these things out. That's what I should have done. I didn't anticipate this, but nonetheless, we just went ahead and applied the tulip paint here, and you can tell where I had to do that. You really have to apply it all along the entire interior of the tail section there, and then all along here. You can see now I'm painting it over at least the exterior part here with yellow, because when I pieced them all together to test it out, you could see a little black outline around this whole section, which actually didn't look too bad, but I don't know, I just figured it would look better if I just paint it yellow. Alright, so that's where we're at this point. I'm just going to finish this section here, and then we can piece the model together. So the flying sub is ready to go now. I had to make a few touch-ups here and there, but the wires now are fed through, and we are ready to mount it onto the base. So the plan is to drill a hole right here. This is all going to be mounted then on this. This is just a PVC end cap I got at Home Depot. I'm going to drill right through there, and then the power sources will be mounted into here along with the switches. So the flying sub is going to be held onto here with just a tiny bit of hot glue. I think that'd be the best approach there. Not really going to use a whole lot. And yeah, we are ready to go. Okay guys, and here we now have the completed project. The sub now has been mounted onto the base. And let me just spend a few minutes to recap here now. If you recall, my original concept was to create this diorama with a water scene. And so I was going to utilize the flying sub model from Moebius models. This is again the same scale that comes with the 1/128 scale Seaview ship. And so we were going to take the flying sub, mount it on some tubes here, and coat them with cotton to simulate an exhaust, but to have this dramatic scene where the flying sub is just shooting out of the water. So as the project evolved, I decided to go back to watching some scenes from the TV show, and I found out that the sub never really shot out of the water in that way, kind of would skim across the surface before it took off. But as we were doing the different types of experiments here with the water scene, this was my second attempt, and this actually resembles what I originally had in mind without it being mounted on the two tubes. But this gave me a chance to experiment with layering and applying paints and kind of creating some different effects here with the water. And but you know, in the end, I decided to duplicate, or at least try to duplicate what I saw on a TV show, and that brings us now to the completed project here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the lights now. We have two switches. If I remind you now, the interior lights are lit by a different power source, and that is a coin-sized battery. That way it wouldn't be so overpowering. And now we have the headlights as well as the engines lit by a 9-volt, and you can see it's much brighter. And so you can see the effect here. Overall, I'm very happy with the way everything turned out. So the rear engines, again, lit by some SMDs. These are come colored orange already, and I wish they would flicker, but again, that's just not available with these types of lights, but the effect is actually pretty good here. What I also like is that the lights are bright enough to shine off the surface here, giving us this glow, and turning to the headlights here, we have a nice bright effect of the lights really shining out. Now, if you decide to do this project, one thing that you do need to do is to light block these areas here. This is something I did not realize until everything was pieced together. But if you recall, I did light block the tail section because the light was glowing through, but I didn't even bother to look at these two sections here. So just make sure that you apply some tulip paint here and here. And again, the lights were purchased from a website called modeltrainsoftware.com. They are a really good source for LED lights. They've got a number of different options that you can use for your model kits. Again, these came pre-wired now with resistors, so you don't really have to calculate anything. You just have to specify what power source you'll be utilizing. So these can be used from a 3 to 12 volt power source, so they easily can handle the 9-volt battery that they're wired to. So this is just one method of creating a waterscape. Again, we use this silicone material that's available at Ace Hardware. It really is a silicone that you use for bathroom repair. And we were able to layer it onto the surface and apply it in such a way that created this wave type pattern. And then also, if you remember, we used some clear styrene plastic to create the higher waves here. And the sub was finally attached here to the base with just a tiny bit of hot glue here and here. And once that was dry, I went ahead and used a little bit more silicone to create these water effects of just to simulate water dripping off the flying sub there. Now, some may suggest to go even further and apply more effects here. I may eventually do that, but I didn't want to overdo it. And so I'm going to think about that a little bit and see. I may eventually do something like that. So in the end, not only did this project allow me to create the diorama I was after, but this also resulted in a display base I can now use with my Seaview model. Alright, so that does it for this project here now, and no doubt I have some other ones lined up. I'll be making some videos of those as well. So until then, thanks again for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.